Someone put a lot of thought behind it to do it in a certain way that is consistent, throughout different countries that is going to be delivered. So,
do you have some special way to prepare for a talk like that, or what do you do when?
It's all about practicing. I think that's
how do
for
you
me.
practice?
I talk to myself, and it's not like I do exactly those words every time, but I talk to myself to get familiar with the content.
And it's not only to read it, but actually saying it out loud.
Yeah, sing it out loud and, talk to yourself about it so you get sort of friends with the content so that you can deliver it in different ways, but still kind of similar.
You listened to the talk from the person you were replacing, so to speak?
Yeah, I had one recording from Italy.
So you had one version of how he had delivered.
But that was, Reggie, if you're listening, then no offense. But he does it in a more American way because he would say, certain things like, "Oh, have you ever been in a meaningful relationship? Raise your hand." You're kind of like that. And as a Swede and being a little bit more shy, I would deliver it in another way, I guess. So there were, certain things that I had to do differently.
So you went there and you gave a talk about, what was it, trust or something? Or what was the...
it was about trust.
What was the title?
Trust.
Just trust?
It was trust, and the topics was trust, and obviously we spoke about trustworthy AI and responsible innovation.
Yeah, so the context is a world tour that SAS Institute done in all the different markets. We had some core executives from SAS meeting C-suite customers across the world, and more or less driving like 4 or 5 different presentations and speeches, where one of them was like trust and ethics and fairness in
exactly
AI.
Yeah,
and it was in Saudi Arabia as well, as a female going up on stage speaking a lot in front of a lot of C-level people then as well.
A lot of C-level people that are also dressed very similarly, which was also a challenge for me when keeping track of who I had spoken to before and who I had already said.
What did you think about your own clothes code or dress code that you had to do given?
Yeah, I was prepared to cover my hair and so on, to be respectful, because that's how they dress there. But I was told already by my driver that I didn't have to, and there's definitely a change going on in the country. And,
so you had some idea about how it was going to go about, but you were positively surprised?
I was definitely positively surprised. It was so much better. Although I was all the time the only woman, basically, I didn't feel, weird or anything. I had to cover myself because, that's one thing that you need to do. You need to cover all the skin and you need to have long arms, although it was almost 50 degrees warm. But there are no code in terms of shoes, which was quite interesting.
Did you have sneakers on? Or?
I didn't. I had proper shoes, but I was looking at other people's feet, how they were wearing flip-flops and bare feet and, runners,
so
all sorts of things. Do you notice that too? Yeah.
Very clear dress code, but no dress code specifically on the shoes.
Exactly. We had a panel of executives and, they have these really nice, scarves and head wearings and these white dresses and then the shoes just, so...
Totally random.
Yeah, it's like going on a prom, but forgetting your shoes. Interesting.
I'm so glad to hear that. And Goran, you have said that as well, all the events you have there in that region, that they are surprisingly respectful and they are... perhaps we have a stronger bias.
We are biased, that's
we are
it,
biased.
Definitely. Yeah. It was such a nice trip and met so many nice people, had so many nice and interesting conversations. And the topic of trustworthy AI is, a topic that is truly interesting to them.
And it is
everyone, I think.
And it is important with trustworthy AI and ethics also in Saudi Arabia, then you would say.
Yeah, definitely. And they were also among the countries that signed the Bletchley Declaration, right?
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, I saw Saudi Arabia around that.
And Goran, you mentioned before, Goran, that like we have the GDPR in Europe, and the ones that they are installing now in, I guess, Dubai.
So there is a equivalent to the GDPR that is actually in Europe that is done in 2018. It has been installed, I think, February this year for the first time in Saudi Arabia. And it's actually equivalent, if not a little bit more stricter than we have it in Europe. So when it comes to data privacy, trustworthy data, and etc., we cannot say that they are far behind, actually, because they have really thought through the entire process, and now this is coming as well in the Emirates and etc. So it's a ongoing discussion already. So it's not something that is new for them.
No, so it's just you need to really set yourself into the regulations and the setups in each different region. Where we have we have one game in US and a specific game in California.
Yeah.
And then we have Europe. And now when you go to China and when you go to different parts of the world, they have their equivalent or sometimes stronger. And you kind of need to know that.
Yeah, it's difficult to navigate.
Yeah, it's difficult to navigate, but you should not assume that it's only GDPR in Europe.
No,
that is
not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Yeah, so just a little bit of correction from my side. So the Saudi Arabia Personal Data Protection Law, so the PDPL is the country first consumer data privacy law, and also covering United Arab Emirates. It was passed by a royal decree in September 2021. The law was amended in 2023 March, and now it's officially came into force in September 2023. So they have been working on this for so long. And keep in mind that this is the nations that currently want to see them on the forefront of metaverse and blockchain and Web3 and all of these new technologies that are coming. So, and if you go and execute conferences there, you will realize that maybe they are not focusing on hands-on practical things about AI and data science, but data, oh my God, they are focusing on data so much. Everything from governance to quality to everything that needs to be done, because they want to protect it as well as we want to have it.
But it's an interesting observation, and you highlighted now that fairness and trust came super high up on the agenda there. And to some degree, what you have seen with the Data Innovation Summit in Dubai is that here they're almost putting more emphasis on data quality and data governance than sometimes I think we are still struggling to get on the agenda with the Swedish business executives. So we're trying to leapfrog into AI. We're trying to leapfrog that, but some of these basics we have been sort of too painful, too hard. And here it's interesting that they are putting quite a lot of emphasis in this part of the world on this part.
Yeah, it certainly changed my view a bit here. So I'm really glad that we heard that. But with that, very welcome here.
Thank you.
Josefin Rosén. We've known each other for a number of years, I think, but you're a trustworthy AI specialist now, right?
Yeah, nowadays.
In SAS. You're also a PhD in, what was it, computational chemistry or something? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a topic called chemometrics. I usually say predictive chemistry because usually no one really knows what chemometrics is, but it's a topic that is on the intersection between mathematics, statistics, and chemistry.
Interesting. Also a winner, a DARE Award winner of the Nordic AI Ethics Professional of the Year.
The first
year.
Best year.
We concluded that was the most important win, right?
Yes. And an awesome public speaker and so many more things. So we're very glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
But
after hundreds of episodes.
Yes. Well, too late perhaps, but better late than never.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Who is Josefin Rosén? How would you describe yourself?
Oh, yeah, that is, the most difficult question I guess you can get. And how long you could talk about it, because I'm so much. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, we have time.
I'm 45 years old. Old.
No, that's young.
Yeah. I live with my husband and a cat and 2 daughters, 10 and 13 years old, in Bromma, in a house. We start with some personal things, at least. I enjoy running a lot, and I think that's my... just running. Yeah, no, I actually had a plan to run marathons back in the days, but that was...
for joy at home.
Yeah. No, I've taken off my watch and I just run.
Yeah, so no gadgets to measure.
No, not even data collection anymore. I used to, but it got too stressful. So now I use it as my sort of creative time. I go out and run, and I think most of the introductions and most of the structure of my presentations and articles are being, done while I'm running. That's
your
where
creative time.
Meditation. Almost.
Yeah, sort of, that's
trail running or road running?
Even both.
both.
So that's what I like to do, apart from what I also do. But that's when I leave AI and work out of my head, is when I go to the stable. And so I ride horses. And my husband...
I had that as well.
Yeah? You do too?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah? Oh, wonderful. My husband does, and my daughters do too. So all of us do. So we tend to spend a lot of time there. We don't have any horses of our own, but it seems like we're, there every night.
But this is an interesting, we can debunk that myth. Do you need to own a horse to be part of that? You don't.
I would love to, but there are different opinions in the family.
But it's a lot of work in a different way as well.
Yeah, it is a lot of work in a way. So you can't just go there and ride.
So how does that work when you don't own a horse, but you can help out and you can pay a fee, I guess? Or how does it work?
We take classes. Yeah. And that includes, taking care of the horse before and after and helping out in the stable. And we have several classes each a week, right? So, yeah.
I remember when I and my sister were getting horses when we were young. And
you had a horse, Dan.
We had
this is one of those things, what didn't I know about my friend?
Exactly.
I had a horse.
Me and my sister, we promised, we will go out and clean the stables and do the, clean up the mud and everything every day and blah, blah. And we did that for like 2 months. And then, of course, the parents had to take over. And, it's a lot of work.
I forget what a country boy you are originally.
Was that a pony or?
We had one Anglo-Arab. I'm not sure what the proper English name is. It's a full-blood kind of thing. And we also had like Norrlandsfjording. I have no idea what that is.
Strong one, yeah.
And this is... this is in the now I'm interrogating you, but it's Kalmar, right? Or?
It's in
Kalmar, okay. So you're from Småland?
Yes, I'm from Småland.
My dad is from Blomstermåla. Do you know what that is?
Of course, I know it very well.
It's very small.
Yes.
Actually, tålable.
Jag pratar egentligen så här, riktigt Konebö.
Det var som tusan.
Very good.
I love how you switch into the accent. Oh, great.
Awesome. Okay, so you
great.
like horses as well.
I like horses, yeah.
How did you come into your field of expertise, the PhD, and later into AI?
So, I'm actually, which is probably a little bit surprising if you don't know it, I'm a pharmacist by training originally. So I studied pharmacy program for 5 years in Uppsala.
It's a long education as well, too.
It's a long one, and you get a license to practice. And I did so for, at a hospital in Jönköping, where I'm from originally, as a clinical pharmacist before I went back to university to do my PhD in chemometrics. And what I did there was I should probably first say that chemometrics, I said statistics and chemistry and mathematics, and that can seem like, a path sort of that would be a little bit odd for a pharmacist, but it was medicinal chemistry. That was the chemistry portions that was sort of related to what I did. And I built a GPS, like a global positioning system for chemical space navigation.
I didn't get that. GPS for chemical space navigation.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So basically, you know how a GPS works, and this was meant to be used for drug discovery. So I used as references, you have like satellites and planets and stars and so on. I used molecular structures with known biological activities. So what we do is to calculate a large number of descriptors from the molecular structures. You can do that from like a vector representation, and then position them in a multidimensional space using machine learning. And this was principal component analysis back in the days. And then based on something called the similarity principle, that is, that molecules that are similar to each other structurally usually have similar biological activity. So then depending on where they end up in the space, that tells something about that certain region of the positioning system. And then you can use that to calculate the same descriptors for new compounds. And then depending on where they end up in this space, you can say something about their activity.
You must be an expert in DeepMind's AlphaFold system, right?
No.
Right? I think you are.
But so, and how will this benefit to have it like a GPS for chemical and biological structures, to have this positioning system? How is that useful?
I mean, it's sort of like an initial screening. If you have a bunch of, you say that you're looking for, a compound, with a new compound with a certain biological activity. You can calculate the descriptors for all of those compounds you have available, and then you can position them in the space and then make smart selections of what to test in an actual test, like in a biological test.
So you can reduce down by start positioning them. This new compound, it will kind of end up in the left-right deep corner.
Yeah.
So then these tests or these validations will be more. So you can sort of zoom in faster.
This is highly more likely that you will get a positive, hit or whatever. So that it's actually still used quite frequently. We turned it into a web tool. It's called ChemGPS NP Web or something like that.
So this becomes almost like a product that you from your PhD. It actually lives still on.
I don't think anyone used my PhD product. So
no, but it's quite interesting. I think the papers have been cited more than 1,000 times, and that's the thing that we say on the website, that if you use the tool, then you have to cite this article. And I can see still, even from this year, I can see scientific papers that are referencing the paper and using the tool. So that's what it was.
So then you left the academic world.
Then I left the academic world, and I went to a software company called Umatrix. And I helped European companies with mainly in the process industry and life science with multivariate data analysis and design of experiments. Before I went to SAS, I've been there for 11 and a half years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
What was your first job in SAS? We are talking about SAS Institute, the software.
Exactly.
company.
For those that are not familiar with SAS Institute, it is a global software company. It's one of the oldest and largest companies in that AI and analytics space, 50 years.
Yes.
So my first role it's always been sort of an advisory related to AI and analytics, cross-industry and cross-country, Nordics usually for a while, EMEA, and now it's a global role. So my first role was as a pre-sale, we called it back then, and I was then working mainly in healthcare sector in Sweden.
So a customer wanted to solve a problem, that analytic style problem, and they were thinking maybe SAS Institute has the right technology to support us, and you had the brains and the know-how analytics, so you could dig into the real problem, so to speak, and then translate it into, okay, how would our tools help solve
exactly
this?
Understand the customer, and then create awareness of what they could do, and then help them get there, basically. And then we started called instead customer advisory, because it's not just pre-sales. You usually follow the customer also after they bought something. And then for the last years, I've been head of AI in the Nordics before I then switched into my new role that I'm super excited about.
Describe, what does it mean to be a trustworthy AI specialist?
Yeah, so it is... First of all, it means that I'm transferring from the sales organization into the R&D instead. And it is a global role. It is a quite small team that are working with AI for Good projects, and also guiding all efforts internally and externally that the company has related to trustworthy AI. So basically making sure that our guiding principles are reflected in everything we do and in the platform.
Yeah, do you have a definition of what is really trustworthy AI?
Yeah, I mean, the simple definition would be, AI that you can trust, right? Yes. AI that is safe and fair and ethical, and that doesn't do any harm to anyone or anything. And I mean, it's so different what is trustworthy, like we spoke about earlier, in different regions and in between different use cases and contexts and cultures and so on. So I think, an important start is to think of what is right and what is fair for us. What are our values and what are our principles that we want to reflect?
So something about what is right and wrong, and something about, what is fair or not.
Yeah, and what is good enough for this use case and those kind of things. For SAS, we have 6 guiding principles for trustworthy AI. See if I remember them now.
Put you on the spot here.
Human centricity, it's transparency, it is accountability, privacy and security, inclusivity, and robustness.
So 6 nice principles that you can, of course, do long clinics on each of them.
Yeah, exactly.
If you really want to dig into layer by layer by layer, what that means.
Yeah, so we use those, we make sure that they're reflected in everything we do and the employees. And of course, mainly also in our platform. It's an AI platform that we call VIA.
So how can you make use of them, or how do you make use of them in SAS? It's one thing to speak about them in a theoretical point of view, and these are the 6 principles, etc. But to really make practical use of them, how do you go about doing that?
I guess it's, two different parts to answer this question. We're first and foremost, we are a software company, but we're also advisory and enable customers with best practice. But if we start with a software company part, then our job is basically to make sure that those principles are that the customers can reflect those or in those principles throughout the AI lifecycle. From data management in the beginning, through model development and through model deployment, that you can work with these things throughout the AI lifecycle. So that would be, in the data management part, it would be, looking at data quality and representation, data lineage and data privacy, being able to suppress certain values and mask certain values and so on. And coming over to model development, it would be about being able to interpret advanced models, so the transparency things come in.
Explainability.
Exactly. And inclusivity, for instance, would be, making sure that you have representative data, but also being able to detect bias and mitigate bias if you have that.
But and how much of this, when you work on this on practical level, would you say you can build certain things into the system, but it's also about developing the right practices? Like, so if you talk about elite data engineering or elite machine learning, within that practice, it's not only to be a very good coder, but how to be a good ethical coder, or how to be able to understand the tricky points here. And what is practice and what is tool? I think it's both.
I think you definitely have to have both. We're talking about a comprehensive approach to trustworthy AI, that it takes not only technology but also people and processes, right? And we do have to support the principles, those 6 principles. We have sort of a governance model that we call the quad.
Quad.
Yeah. So as you can guess, it has 4 pillars, and it is now I need to remember those 2, but those are oversight, controls, culture, and platform. So there are different, aspects, and those 4 are reflecting people, process, and technology, right? So, with those as a guide, we can also guide customers on best practice, and reflecting, these principles through that. So oversight would, for instance, be, to recommend customers that they have some kind of oversight committee that are looking into ethical dilemmas.
So in practice, what would that mean? So you have a customer to SAS. They want to be, trustworthy. They create some kind of oversight committee. Is that like a reference group of some kind, or a set of people that have this as a side business or some extra?
Yeah, we actually use it internally as well. Yeah. So at SAS, we have an oversight committee as well. And that is a group of sort of disciplinary executives that provide guidance on basically anything that comes up. They have meetings every week because it turns out that that's needed. And that can be anything, from procurement, what kind of technology we are going to procure, and how we, end up selling, and whether we should sell certain things and certain projects and certain services on the market.
So something from the procurement department or the group that they have, or the team that work with that, they can go to this oversight committee and basically present their case, and or how does it work?
We ask them to review, is this something that we should do? And I think it needs to be stakeholders are high up in the organization, obviously, but there also need to be some kind of diversity, which is always an important aspect. They bring different things to the table, and shield from bias in those processes as well. But usually when something is needs review, it could be the oversight committee, But we also have the data ethics practice where I'm part of reviewing, for instance, content and how we communicate things to customers. And there is also, a legal department, of course, for certain things. And there are also a messaging alignment board that are looking at the messaging. So that is aligning. So there are so many different aspects. But when we're advising customers, it is, generally have some kind of oversight committee or oversight kind of group part. And then I mean, the second pillar is controls, and that is all about compliance that we might come into later. All these regulations and, executive orders or, legislations that are being introduced, to have readiness for that and to monitor that. And that is also, something that we recommend customers to be aware of and prepare for, while we're also ourselves, since we have customers throughout the world, we're also looking into and carefully monitor what those are across the world to be able to meet those requirements for the customers in our platform.
I have a bit of a hard time to understand the difference between the oversight committee and the control. Mm-hmm. What is the difference?
I guess the oversight would be the values, what's right and what is wrong. Right. That goes beyond regulations,
right? I see.
And
so
controls would be
hardcore regulations that you have to comply with, and whatever kind of internal ruling system you have.
There are usually, compliance, regulatory things and risk mitigation things. But then there are also, sort of ethical dilemmas that are more, and that needs to be discussed sort of based on the values, strong values based on principles. And we have agreed on those principles, which is good because we can always come back to those for.
Then you had culture. What do you mean with that?
Oh, you remember. Good. Yes. And culture, that is an important thing, I guess, because what we recommend is to have some sort of, cultural fluency on the topic of trustworthy AI, so that it sort of, always rings a bell when something is not right.
And how do you fix that? Do you give lectures about it, or what?
Yeah, it's all about training and coaching and, enablement and skilling people and educating people. So SAS, we have an education department, obviously, but there right now, you can educate yourself everywhere online, and but we do, as the data ethics practice, we have done very sort of intentional coaching and training of the employees around the world in trustworthy AI principles and methods and tools to enable the methods, just to get everyone.
You said tools. Isn't that part of the platform, or is it part of the tooling?
That's also part of the platform.
Yes.
But it's also part of get the fluency in how to use it and how to think what to use and what are the principles and what are the methods, not only technical methods to support the principles, and what are the tools, of course, to work with it in our own platform. But then platform is, as you can tell, regardless of vendor or open source, it's basically, what are the capabilities that are needed in order to be able to develop trustworthy AI.
So would you say, because there are two ways to look at platform here, either you are talking about, what is the features and functions that is built into the VIA platform of SAS Institute, but you can also take the dimension of what are the design patterns, what are the things, how a good system and platform should be built. I could even argue agnostically.
Yeah, what are the portions? Yeah.
So when I look into an ethical system, what type of features and functions have you actually installed into your system in order to be able to do the pillars, so to speak?
Exactly. And like I said, that is things that should cover. Basically, I mean, that's why it's overlapping with the platform, because you need sort of start this work already before you start writing the code, even in the beginning, before you start asking the questions. And then you need support in data management and model development, all the way to model deployment and after deployment as well, because you need governance, right? You need to manage the models and monitor them over time.
But is it fair to then summarize? You have three core in the quad. You have three core topics that at some point, but the three that needs to be distilled down into the fourth, what I was going for.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, you have three core topics out of the four, but as long as they stay on PowerPoint level, they are not operational. So ultimately, how do you operationalize AI ethics into the core systems you're building? So how do you make AI ethics computational becomes the end game?
Operations is I mean, also that would be sort of like a fifth leg that we sometimes exchange and sometimes add. And I mean, that would be the glue that sort of makes it all sort of roll, the quad to sort of spin maybe.
Yeah. But it's interesting how to get out of the PowerPoint. We have the policy now, and it's great, and it's in the shelf of this guideline that we have on the 9th floor. But how do I get them down to the first floor where the coders sit and where the actual systems are built?
And that is a challenge.
That is the challenge.
It is a challenge, and that's all about that fluency, right? Communication and like the cultural fluency that we spoke about. Sort of get it into, everyone's
But how to
mind.
translate code into machine readable policy, or how to translate policy into machine readable code. I mean, like how to take, this is our principles and our AI ethics principles. At some point in time, they need to guide how the system is engineered, I guess. Or?
Yeah, definitely.
But I guess, just becoming part of the culture of thinking in a trustworthy way that's half the games.
I think so, because in the end, you need to get the principles and culture into the data engineering practice or into the data science practice. The engineers that actually building the systems has to have the knowledge in order to build the systems in the right way. So how to distill it down to an engineering practice, that's what I'm going for.
The engineer needs to think of inclusivity, for instance, when looking at the data.
And what does it mean to build an inclusive system, right? How do you engineer, do you need to be able to translate that down into the design patterns that are inclusive? Interesting.
I mean, it's all about, involving a lot of diverse people into the development, into the job, hands-on job. But it's also about the data, mostly, especially for the data engineer, right?
I come to think about, if you want to have trustworthy AI, but you can also think of like a security context. Let's say you want to have secure IT systems. You can think that you want to have an oversight for being able to do so, for sure. You can think about the control of making sure complies with whatever regulation you have from a security point of view. The culture, absolutely, but also the platform and tooling support for doing so. So I think this is a really nice framework for working both with trustworthy and other types of.
But I think we have this lingo. In security has come a little bit further. We talk about there is security by design, right? So it's one thing to have oversight and control and understanding. Oh, we have a hole, we have a risk here. But how do I actually build my practices? So I have the security dimension as a requirement dimension that these complex considerations are taken by design, shifting left on the problem, so to speak. And I propose, I want to test it on you. Isn't this one of the challenges that how do we go from AI ethics as an oversight problem to a design problem? You see what I mean? Like, how do we actually do the right things in the ideation phase, in the validation phase, in the POC phase, all the way through? Those considerations are equal in requirement setting as the functional requirements.
It is, and I guess that is also, the role of the data ethics practice to make sure that it is reflected throughout.
I guess the culture is one way to shift it left, so to speak. I think.
Yeah, but I agree. But what I found, I think this is the hardest part. So you can have a data governance culture or data ethics culture, blah, blah, blah. And we all agree upon it on PowerPoint level, and we all go to the training where we talk about the values. But how many is stressing this? Okay, now I want to understand how you got that principle and value. How is this reflected in your coding patterns or in your coding practices? And for me, that is quite hard, right? So culturally, you understand, and but to even think about how do I get my 20 or 200 engineers to code in a different way or bring that into the coding cycle. I think that is really difficult.
Trustworthy by design.
Yeah.
Yes. That's where you need, I guess, the orchestration and the platform surrounding, making sure that those coders that are writing something that I wouldn't understand, that would be interpretable on another level, and that it's possible to monitor, that it's possible to, follow up over time, and, really thinking of these principles one at a time. Is it inclusive? Well, what kind of data do we have? Does it reflect only white middle-aged men, or does it reflect also, some female or some other ages, whatever? Does it represent those that I'm intending to see as users? Is it transparent? Is it accountable? Do we look at what kind of bias we could have had here, and if we have, do we take care of it? Is it, and so on and so on. Yeah. Just really question each step of the AI life cycle from the principles, and making sure that we have the transparency, we have the inclusivity, we have the robustness.
But I have a really good anecdote, an example on exactly this, where I think where it's really difficult can show up. So what you said, I agree with. Throughout the whole life cycle, we need to then be able to translate that into, to think about that even down on the engineering level. But I take a very concrete example, data governance topic. And we realize, we're going to share data, so we need to have very strong metadata management, okay? So we have now agreed upon, we need to have metadata describing our different data sets in order to combine it up, in order to build ESG KPIs in this particular case. Very interesting, because we have very different operational data that needs to be combined. Now, the end game here that we are talking about, what we are going for is basically, we now need to set a standard how we can do machine readable metadata management. So basically, in the end, you have the policy all the way down to a very hardcore coding standard, how we do metadata management as part of the code snippets that follows everything around. So so we're down to the coding principles of what we are calling things in code, right? Now, all of a sudden, we have taken metadata into something that is machine readable, and now we can populate the data catalog with it, or the engineers can properly use it, right? So what I'm saying is, we go from a very, very high level of AI ethics into how will this be reflected in the code, which I think is what we want to have to really have a proper ethics or proper governance. But this last step, I find very, very difficult.
It is difficult, but I would say that we could help with that.
But do you think it's a fair analogy?
Definitely, and that's what it's all about.
That is what it's all about. Yeah. How is in the end ethics reflected in the code?
Yeah, how is it reflected, and whatever principles you decide on, how are they reflected throughout this, and what capabilities do we have that really, take care of those things?
Yeah. Could we just try to exemplify perhaps how some customers potentially from SAS are implementing Trustworthy AI? Can you think of something from some kind of industrial sector or some customer, and give some kind of concrete example, if you could?
Yeah, first of all, it is a global company, right? So it's across the world, and it is cross industry, in all kinds of industries. Our customers basically do everything and anything with AI. So there's basically nothing that they don't do with AI, and especially since the history is long, right? So there is, to be general first before mentioning a specific one, would be, to help, banks, for instance, do fair credit scoring. That is
classic.
Yeah, like transparent and fair and bias tested, bias mitigated, and monitored and managed and taken care of all the way.
So what is the example here that you're going in and helping them review it, audit it in terms of do you have any bias gaps in this, or is it designing from the beginning, or both?
It's very different, because we do have both a consultancy leg, SAS, and we do have an advisory leg and sales leg, right? So it depends what the customer wants. We also have a partner network. So it could be here that we're just enabling them with education, because there is also an education department that is part of the consultant part. It could be that we're just training them on how to do these things on their own. It could be that they're just having our platform and doing it themselves, but we enable them through capabilities through the platform. And it could also be that we're, involving our partners or our own consultants to actually do the work for them, or with them, or together with them, or, as supervisors for them. So that could be very different. And we're doing...
So the engagement model and the examples of how there are many different examples of how to engage on this topic.
Definitely. And it could be on an advisory level, but it could also be on a more hands-on and doing it for them. There is there is all these as a service offers nowadays too, right? So it can be basically anything the customer would like to.
But do you have a top of mind an example that you could sort of we're now okay, that's the broadest spectrum. Let's take one example.
Yeah. So one example that I know that I could talk about because that's also the thing, right? With companies is the recent example, just very recent with Erasmus Medical Center in healthcare. That's usually where we have also sensitive cases, right? One example of what we did there that was very much related to Trustworthy AI was to help them build. I mean, they had, like everyone, a lack of resources, and it needed to be more efficient. So we were developing a model that could, help making decisions or decide for the doctors whether it would be safe or not to send home a patient after a major oncology surgery. That was like the first pilot, and now they're doing that for more kinds of decision. But this was the initial model. And I mean, when you do take such a decision, you're working with vulnerable patients, with serious disorders, and you're doing this on the bedside for the patient. So it needs to be trustworthy, it needs to be safe, and the doctor needs to definitely be able to trust that it is safe, that he can leave this to the AI instead. So I mean, the transparency part and all of those capabilities that we talked about before was obviously super important.
The system had to have all these things built in order to have the credibility and trust to be able to be used.
Exactly. The doctor needs to be able to see, this is how the decision is made. This is what it's based on. And that makes sense from a medical point of view. And it becomes accurate. I mean, it's not only about fair, it actually needs to be accurate, right?
Yeah. So in this particular example, it's not enough to spit out the answer or recommendation. The actual doctor needs to have a GUI to understand what happened now.
Yeah, traceability
and all this
transparency.
So the system needed
things
to be built so the doctor could assess how was this decision made.
Yeah.
It goes faster and all that, but you can't make a black box out of this. Of course.
Exactly. You can never have a black box. You need to have transparency, and it's super important for trust, right? And they could, then of course have lower readmission rates. That was the whole purpose, that you could send home those that could actually be sent home and keep those and needed to stay at the hospital. And you get lower readmission rates, and you also get to free up hospital beds for those that needed hospital beds, and you free up the doctor's time, which was something that they were struggling with. So
how do you work with Trustworthy AI when it comes to larger deep learning based models that some people call black boxes, but others say you can actually have explainable AI from them as well?
Yeah.
What do you think about those?
I mean, we have in SAS, we have built in a number of, interpretability tools, right? Yeah, cool. So, and those
even for deep learning models.
Even for deep learning models. Yes. And those are of different kind. I mean, different applications require different depth of understanding, right? And that is everything from partial dependence, where you just sort of see what happens if you change one variable in a certain direction, what happens in general to the output. That could be ICE, which is the next level, where you do the same thing for one variable at a time, but for one prediction at a time. And then you have LIME, which would be like going into, building sort of a regression model inside the model and looking at also one specific prediction at a time and getting coefficients. And then you can, interpret the output. You're modeling the prediction as an output. So that's what you're looking at. How was a prediction made? And then it is a prediction that enables a decision in the end. But you're looking at the prediction here. So you get the coefficients. And the most, I guess, computational heavy one that we have in SAS is Shapley values, that comes from the world of gaming. And basically why it's so heavy is, I guess, because, it's it takes all of the variables into account at one time. So it looks at how much each player, which then would be a variable, would contribute to the win, which is the actual prediction. And you get all the both direction and how big contribution it is, and they all add up to the actual predicted value. So then you can definitely say something about it. And that is also for deep learning models.
I'm so glad you say that, because explainability in deep learning is something that I specialized in back in the day as well. And you can understand a lot from even deep learning models. And Lime, as you say, is certainly one thing, and Shapley value is another. You have this kind of saliency maps you can actually put out there, and integrated gradients, and there are so many different techniques that actually makes models make sense, and they can explain themselves. And I remember there was this big language model called T5 from Google that is still one of the top ones, and they created another one called WT5. It's called YT5, and they actually trained the model while producing an accurate output to also predict an explanation. So they both generated a response with the proper answer, but also with an explanation on the side. That you could actually have a model explaining itself, and that actually made sense, was really cool to me.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, this is so, also when we talk about trust, is so important to be able to understand. And in SAS, you actually also have natural language explanations. So even kind of like that, I guess, even if you have a Shapley value, you can interpret the plot or the sort of diagram or whatever you would call it, there's also always a generated text that is generated based on your specific analysis, telling you what it means and how to interpret it.
And my reflection when I hear this is a little bit like, this is actually a good example of what we mean, like when you build a system that is an ethical system or a transparent system, it's a little bit like to understand that you're not, the definition of done of the system is just when it can you spit out the model. You have other features that you need to continue until you have a definition of done. You have actually then the core model, and then you have an explainability feature that is part of the product. And as long as you understand that and you build that in, now you are starting to think transparent AI, trustworthy AI. The core product, the core algorithm is not enough to create a consumable, trusted product. And I think it's this part, if we can translate our policy down to what is the extra features that we actually need to invest in order to have an end-to-end product that is trustworthy. I think then we are getting somewhere close to where we need to be.
Definitely. And you can talk to me if you want that.
That's a nice one.
But then if we move, yes, and she's, you're truly a specialist in this. But then if we have, the recent extreme advancements in AI, not the least in generative AI and all the ChatGPT kind of models of the world, and they hallucinate a lot, and they are less than trustworthy in many cases. Some perhaps good, but in other cases, or many cases, it's not. What do you think about that type of AI, the latest type of generative AI, and that problem with hallucination? Do you think we will have trustworthy AI also in this kind of generative AI soon?
I think so. I think there are many different answers to that. I hope, for instance, that that when we're forcing some kind of law into this area, that would also promote, innovative approaches to fill the gaps in terms of interpretability for some of those newer, like large language models that are not so transparent at the moment. I think until we have that, it will be important to always keep the human in the loop, as we talk about, right? We need to have someone that is always reading what comes out, for instance, of a recommendation from ChatGPT before we send it to a customer or to a patient, that is validating with the subject matter expertise or just, being able to understand the language that we generated the output in. So I think, if we keep humans involved, we can stay trustworthy for now. But I mean, the transparency for many of those applications are definitely a challenge right now. And the data that it was trained on is also somewhat hidden, right? But that is, I guess, going to change when we see some regulations.
I love some of the progress we're seeing here. I think all the big tech giants, and the one leading in generative AI is moving towards more trustworthy generative AI as well, forcing references to be included in the output or some kind of explanation afterwards, and it has to explain itself like post hoc of the generation to do so.
And be that, I mean, people or humans in the loop, like we said, or actually adding on top of these, adding rule-based systems or, other types of actually transparent systems that could help.
I saw in Google Bard, for example, when they generate a response, you can press a button afterwards saying, please Google for references, Google search for references in the output. So then it actually goes back afterwards and try to see, is this collaborated with some kind of proper references? And you can highlight and see this text actually comes from here. So you can see where the output potentially is coming from. It's done afterwards, but still, then you can see if there is no references to any, material you can find on the web.
That's usually what we do with deep learning too, right? We do it afterwards, like post.
And humans do that as well, right? I mean, I can say a lot of nonsense, and then I think afterwards, can I collaborate this somehow? Can I find a post-hoc explanation for why I think that Apple is crap? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that.
Or what did I just say? Did I just make that up? I don't know.
But
exactly.
But I think there's an understanding here. Sometimes we get paralyzed. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. But it's also because we are limiting the way we define the system. So if you're now taking about, okay, we want to have generative AI in production, but we want to do it safe. And then you highlight, if we have a human in the loop and we are corroborating this in the correct way, if you then draw the boundary of the system as the combined processes of the humans together with the generative AI system, then now we can have a trustworthy generative AI augmented system, so to speak. So sometimes it's a little bit like we go into these problems, we are creating, this cannot be solved. Yes, but it's because you have done your view of the system so narrow. So if you think about this as the multi-agent system where one agent is a human and the other one is the generative AI and the third one is then you can solve this and you can
teamwork, right?
Yeah. So I think sometimes we come into pseudo discussions where someone doesn't want to solve it when you actually, if you flip the criteria or how you can solve it, of course it's solvable.
Have you heard about Anthropic and they created a new language model called Claude? And Google and Amazon is investing in Anthropic, and the founders are from DeepMind and Meta and whatnot. But they created this language model, and they use something that they call constitutional AI. And I think this is a really nice approach. So to just describe it briefly, they basically have a second language model on the side. So one model is producing the output, another one is trying to judge how proper it is in some way from a more trustworthy point of view. So what they did is that instead of trying to give like a value from trustworthy or not in 0 to 1, they instead in the beginning had 50 constitutions written by humans, like the constitutions of United States. So they define a set of, these are the proper values that we believe in as humans, or as an organization, and they write it down as text. And then they train a separate model to say, you should try to find a connection to one of these constitutions from the output that they have. And in that way, you can basically ask this kind of constitutional AI model to say, given this output, is it really following the constitutions that we have? And it can reference that. And it can say yes or no in a rather nice way. And that, I think, is a really, really nice approach.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. So I haven't heard of that.
So you have a principal engine, you have a constitution engine that you're running on top of the output engine, so to speak. As a way to get policy, is this within the bounds of what we want?
That's good. We can teach them the principles as well.
Because some other people are trying to put that into the same model. So, but then the problem is if you put the policy and the constitutions into the same model that generated it makes it really hard to change the policy. So then if you want to change a policy or add some constitution, you simply do that to that model and it will apply to everything directly. So it's a really nice approach, I think.
It is.
So, and are they the only ones doing it like this?
To my knowledge, yes.
It's a very interesting modular approach to it.
Yeah, I have to read up on that.
Well, are you hopeful in the future of generative AI and trustworthy AI then? So
yes, I am. I think definitely there is a future, and I think we tend to talk a lot about the risks about generative AI, and I mean there are certainly risks, but I think also it's also dangerous to refrain from using it and experiencing with it because it's such potential in it. So we just have to make sure that we're aware of the risks and how to approach it and navigate it in trustworthy way.
Perhaps AI can even help us humans to become more trustworthy with all the statements coming forward. So using constitutional AI to say whatever statement that Trump makes or whoever, and just give a live, real-time judgment.
But this is maybe part of the philosophical section. It's like we are putting all this effort, and we are really, when we are talking AI and ethical AI, this is really coming to the forefront. What happens if you put that beacon of light of discussing what we are doing now and then putting it back to our normal society, our normal ways of doing in politics or whatever? I wonder how many cracks in the paint you would find if you really. So I think there is a larger story here that we are now starting to get these topics to the forefront on the algorithm, but go in and have a look at any company, how they make decisions, or how transparent is it really, how biased is it really. So I it's refreshing in some ways, but I'm a little bit like scary too. You should point that flashlight to the right and see what you see. It's a lot darker over to the right than where the AI is right now. To be honest, well,
Definitely.
So it's easy that we now go, oh, it's so scary.
But we are scary too.
The monster is over there. You just put a flashlight to the right, and you will see the real monster here.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good thought.
I think so.
Perhaps we can move a bit more into all the improvements, really big changes happening in the last couple of weeks. I think in the AI Safety Summit and the Bletchley Park Agreement and whatnot. And let's start with that. Perhaps the AI Safety Summit that happened in UK and China and US and EU came together. What do you think about that?
I mean, the AI Summit.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
Summit, yes.
This AI Safety Summit, I mean, the AI Summit is, something
That's
we had for a long time.
That's yeah.
I mean, this was the first AI Safety Summit. And I guess, just that we're having a summit that is focusing on AI safety and involving the whole world like that is a good sign that there is a commitment to this and there is a focus on that worldwide, which is good. And then, I mean, for those that didn't know, I don't know if you talked about it in the podcast before. I mean, it's a super important people gathering. I think only 100 people being invited to the Prime Minister in the UK for this summit. And it's like people like Vice President Harris of the US and Kamala Harris.
Did you hear her speech, by the way?
I just heard parts of it. But
she gave an awesome speech.
She's so good, I hope that she can maybe be president. Hope that Biden is not listening.
Of course,
maybe
Biden
he is.
Listening. Yes.
And, Elon Musk and Stuart Russell and those kind of cool high up people gathering. And I think then during the summit, I guess they also signed this Bletchley Declaration, right? Yeah. 28 countries signing this. And I mean, it's important organizations present and important countries present, which really makes it some credibility, I think. Then, I mean, they're agreeing on that there are risks and that there are benefits, and they are agreeing on that there is a need for scientific collaboration, international scientific collaboration to succeed in AI ethics. Those are all good things, and I'm so happy that they agree on that. But then I guess, the vision is a strong vision, but what I could be missing a little bit at this point, and that might change, is, the roadmap ahead and how we should get there and so on. They were talking about an AI Safety Institute in the UK. That might be one thing if that happens, and also
that's an oversight, right? That you are speaking about, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They're listening to us and to me, and also I think they will take some roadmaps and some measures to move ahead with it. But it's a good commitment.
Because isn't that the problem otherwise with trustworthy AI in general, that if just one company is doing trustworthy and other people are maximizing revenue, that the people potentially that is more responsible is going to lose out?
Yeah, but I think there are some good reasons to go with trustworthy AI, and that's been also stated in numbers that I don't know by heart. That embracing sort of trustworthy AI principles is also doing the right thing, kind of thing. Is usually good for business, and the opposite is usually bad for business, right? And we're talking about how it is so much easier to maintain trust than it is to try to rebuild it after it was lost. So those companies that are not working like that and maybe doing a lot of money right now, they might stand, in the corner crying later on. They're losing everything and struggling to get back on track again.
It's a great sales pitch for trustworthy AI, and I certainly agree, of course.
Good one. You have to go back and look at that recording and remember. But yeah.
And with that, I guess it's It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast. It was double today. There was laughter as well. 2 buttons at the same time. Not good.
I thought there was a new angle here, but that was a mistake.
No, it's like 8 buttons. I managed to press 2 of them at the same time. Yeah. In any case, right?
Yeah, awesome. So we do this kind of middle break where we, in the midst of discussion, we will continue speaking about trustworthy AI afterwards. But we have a small section where we simply speak about some of the top news that each of us have heard in recent times. I know I have like 3 really big things. I would only speak about one, but or 2, or maybe 3. But anyone wants to start?
I think based on where we were when we talked about the AI Safety Summit, there was a good news story that I think fits well into this. That we can start with yours.
Like you said, and continue talking about trustworthy AI afterwards. I'm all about trustworthy AI, right? So that's the only thing I listen to the news. And this is also 1, 2, 3, 4 different things. But I guess what I would say is important is last week. It was a big week in the world of AI safety. Not only the AI Safety Summit in the UK that we just talked about, and the literally declaration that was signed by 28 countries. Big sign of commitment and focus. Yeah, exactly. That was companies and countries, representatives from 28 countries, but it was more signatures, I guess. We also had, that same week, we had Biden signing the executive order in the US, which is, basically the first thing that has the force of a law related to AIs. It's a big thing. It's a broad thing as well, covering a lot of different things. And like I told you, we have for the data ethics practice where I now work nowadays.
Data is a part of SAS, right?
SAS, exactly. And that's my team, basically. Our vice president and my manager, Reggie Townsend, was actually there for the signing of the executive order. Cool. So that was a big thing to me. And he was sending, live updates in our Teams chat.
The executive order that was, was it in the White House then?
It was in the White House.
And your manager basically was there? Or?
Yeah, it was there, like standing, right
listening
in front
to Biden,
of them. Yeah, really close by. We got pictures of close-ups. And I guess, he's...
How cool.
That is cool.
Yeah,
and the reason is Reddy is also, Biden has a national AI advisory committee that is advising him on AI, which is a big thing. I think we should have that.
Something we should have
well.
in Sweden as well.
And your boss is part of that.
My boss is one of those in that committee, so that's why he was there when the signing was.
So leading up to how they have framed the executive order and what it entails with how they want to direct it to their different departmental agencies and stuff like that. So your boss has been part of.
He's been part of
revision
that
process to get.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what he's done in the process, but he's definitely has one foot in that door.
Foot in the door of the lobby.
Yeah, definitely. So that was the one big thing for me, I think. And then it was quite funny because it was like everything happened last week. So this was on a Monday, and the Leicester Park signing was on Wednesday. So he sort of sneaked in before, and then on the same day, also Monday, there was. That G7 countries agreed on a voluntary code of conduct for AI, which was also a big thing because it's also a worldwide thing, right? And acknowledging that things need to be taken into account in the world of AI at this point, even though we don't have regulations in place, they are, agreeing on certain commitments. So that was a big thing as well. And
I love the executive order also did the same thing, including the top tech giants. I think it was like 15 tech giants, the Googles, the OpenAI,
important organizations,
all the NVIDIAs, and I think so many other of the top AI companies were there as well. And I think doing if you don't have this kind of global kind of agreement, some people will be getting caught in the AI race.
But this is such a big topic, so let's not take it in the news section, but let's go back to this particular topic, because there are so many angles here that are super important. How this relates to then EU regulation, EU Act. I think this is more important. So there are so many angles so let's continue with the news, and then we take this deeper, because this is a key topic.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so I can go next after that. So thanks for that was the AI, Trustworthy AI news. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go with the Elon Musk story. Anyone who has been following this podcast know, we had Moduli making even a word cloud. How many times have you said Elon Musk on the show? So of course we need to have an Elon Musk's news when it's there, and it's of course, it doesn't say XAI debuts Grok. It says Elon Musk debuts Grok. So this is the AI bot to rival ChatGPT and others. And of course it's XAI, former Twitter, that is coming out with their model. And of course it's, in the press release, it sort of highlights that, Grok, the company said it has been modeled on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's supposed it has to have its same width. So this is sort of a language model that is supposed to be a little bit funny, a little bit quirky in terms of how it answers. And of course, that's it's so Elon Musk, who has fart sounds in his car,
Does he?
Yeah. If you read the his biography, you can kind of see he has his super side and he has his silly side. What else can we say about this? Well, it's coming out of this, and it's the first beta release or alpha release. It's quite narrowly released in the beginning now. Who can try it out? Has anyone even tried it yet? I don't think it's quite narrow yet.
It's open to a small
only open
number of people.
And of course it's using the data from Twitter, of course.
Yeah, so it really has real-time access to data in a way that no other large language model have today.
So what can we summarize, which is quite unique? I mean, it's this language model based on Twitter that is a quite interesting angle.
Yeah, and I think they created the company XAI rather short, not that long ago. I think it was like 2-3 months ago.
Of course, immediately after he proposed that we should have like a paper when we say slow down AI so I can catch up.
Are
you saying he has double standards?
No, I say that all the time. I'm sure that's the reason he wants to stop.
slow down, so Grok can come out.
And in XAI, he bought like 10,000 H100 GPUs. Or something,
the next day, immediately.
But is there anything else we can comment on that?
I think the performance of that was kind of surprising, given that I think according to themselves, have trained only for 2 months, and they're releasing it very, very quickly. If it's true or not, I'm not sure, but potentially they train it for a very short period of time, and
it's trained on Twitter data or
more than Twitter data, but certainly on Twitter as well. But it's not that big. If I recall correctly, I think it's like 33 billion parameters, which is much more than GPT-3 was, and certainly much more than GPT-4. And still it was surprisingly good. Not beating GPT-4, because that's still in a lead in so many ways, but it's surprisingly good given the small size of the model. And that's impressive. And I'm sure that in coming months, we will see upcoming releases and iterations on this that will be really impressive. We'll see.
Yeah, and just the trivia here. Grok. What is Grok? Grok. What's that name? And this is so Elon Musk. So Grok is a term coined by Robert A. Heinlein in his 1961 science fiction novel Stranger in a Strange Land. In the book, Grok is a Martian term with no direct Earthling translation. So grok is a Martian word, and we don't really know what it means. That's Elon Musk.
Yes, and he made it funny.
Yeah, of
which
course.
means equal to a lawsuit.
Yeah. He doesn't.
Yeah, I saw some upload. He asked the model to.
You remember why Microsoft took down the chatbot?
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, in the press release here, the joke is even on CNBC. So the example was what happens if you ask grok how do you cook up cocaine? Of course, I can help you with this, and he gives you a bullshit answer, and then says in the end, "I'm just kidding," So
please don't make cocaine or something.
So it's not like politically correct anywhere.
I mean, I saw something. It asked to please roast the biggest news magazines in US or something, and it started to give really harsh comments about
but I can see how many who are so tired of all the politically correct things would kind of.
I would say it like that: let him release it. Just release it to everybody, and then count days before he's going to get a lawsuit.
But he knows that, and he's going to put that on the marketing account, my friend. He's going to put this is the best marketing he can have, right?
Yeah. That's why he went to Joe Rogan basically to promote it as well. Good stuff. Let's move on.
Good. Let's move on. I'll give the stage to you, Anders. You had several.
Yeah, but I'll take the biggest one, of course.
And one more question. So if you're talking about trustworthy AI, he took over Twitter because it was not trustworthy, right?
According to him, yes.
Yes.
According to
and then you train data, an AI model on top of something that you said that it was not trustworthy? And
but
bias?
he removed all the bots and all the bad
He
hateful
removed all the
speech.
employees, and with that all the I see. Good.
It's fun. Anyway, it shakes up the world a bit.
Yeah,
with
it's
Elon
fun.
Musk's
It's
world.
fun.
Okay, so one other really big thing happening this week was that OpenAI had their developer conference on Monday, called Dev Days or something, and they released a large number of new features. So one of the big thing was the new GPT-4 model called GPT-4 Turbo. And sorry, my throat is a bit poor. But one of the things is it's much bigger context window on this one. So instead of 8,000 tokens, it's like 128,000.
So now you can put the whole book in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like 300 pages or something,
Yeah.
text in a single context.
In single prompt. Wow.
And I think that there was a 38 or 32K context that some people have access to on GPT-4, but this is 128K, is more than any other model have, and it's a really big thing. They also reduced the prices significantly, like 2 or 3 times of the previous prices, so it's much cheaper now. Still not that cheap. If I think it was like 1 cent per token or something, so if you take like 128,000 tokens,
It's still some money.
and then 1 cent per token is like $1,000 per prompt. That's not cheap.
No.
No, but now you can really have you can kind of have all the data you really need as a way to steer the chat to one particular content, in order to really steer the accuracy and quality. So it's a huge thing, of course.
I'm not sure about the prices. It sounds far too expensive still to me. But still, the comparison to the traditional GPT-4 is like 2 or 3 times cheaper.
But could you a little bit elaborate how big deal this is to go to 100? Like this whole token thing that you really can put the whole thing in it. It really opens up.
I don't think that's the proper solution. Going forward a bit, I think you need to have another way to input data. But they actually do that as well. But of course, having a big context makes everything super more simple.
Yeah,
you can just put the last thing you spoke about in the same context, and you don't need to do anything else. And that makes things very simple. But it's not a truly scalable thing. But what they have done more, if we go to that, is even more impressive, I think. So one of the things they do is they create GPTs, basically allowed to.
Yeah, that I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So like custom GPT. So you can train your own GPT and publish it. So they have like a GPT builder, like a graphical interface for that. Also like an API. So you can do this from an API point of view to train your own GPT. But then you can have your own custom instruction as you can for the GPT and say, now you're supposed to be a podcast host and speak in that and that way. You can also upload data. So you can have like a big text file with all the things that Henrik and I have said throughout the 100 podcasts. And then use that.
It has the same style.
Yes, and use the information that we specifically said, even though it wasn't fine-tuned on our output, I don't think. We can then add whatever data we want and make it use that data when generating the output. So then it can, replace me and Henrik and just output in a much better way, probably.
No, so put all your mail conversations in there and make him
but it's like
write like you.
Yeah. So let us put it like this. McKinsey and the other guys, they're trying to start build their own language model, right? So I want to build a system that is the AI advisor. Let's call it Josefin, right? Mm-hmm. And then I input all the articles that you have written, all the things that you believe on this. And then basically you can have Josefin on your shoulder now. And what is crazy is that with the GPT builder, literally I can go and build a Josefin chatbot scanning all the articles and everything that is built on whatever IP that you have, or so you could in minutes take the whole whatever you have in all your models in SAS and build that chatbot yourself with clicks. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
And it's quite crazy.
It is that, and then it basically means you can create your custom GPT model. And they also going to do like a GPT store, similar to the App Store. They're going to have a marketplace where customers are going to publish their own GPT assistant. And then people can buy it, and you will get a revenue share. Of course, OpenAI will keep one big part. We don't know how much, but still, you can make money from building your own GPTs. That's a big thing. What they also claim is they are not taking the full step to an autonomous agent. So they're saying this is one step towards having truly autonomous agents where they actually take action themselves, but they don't want to release it too quickly because they think potentially it can be a bit harmful. Mm-hmm. But they still want to make the market of a lot of GPTs out there so people understand what they can do.
Very generous.
Yes.
Very smart, because it's an app store. Apple is generous that we can have all these apps, but they're at the same time making a hell of a lot of money on it.
It's the most expensive one. It takes 30% of everything that you do.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam Altman, he actually built the GPT on stage live.
Yeah, I saw that.
So he basically took a text file with all the advice that is given for startups. He worked at Y Combinator before, so he has given a lot of advice to startups. So he just put that file in there. He gave some custom instructions. He created this new model, and then he can ask questions. And any kind of startup founder can just go there. How should I hire people? What should I think of building this kind of business model? And
so the startup helper, cool, built in minutes on stage.
And you don't need to be a programmer to do so. No.
Exactly. I have to watch that recording.
That is what I was waiting for you to say, actually, because the whole point of this is actually it's aligned with their commitment to democratize AI. And expand its practical capabilities. That is how the whole thing is actually structured, why they are actually doing this. By doing this, they're killing also thousands of companies that in March build like, plugins that you can put on top of.
Did they kill the plugin market?
Yeah, of course.
They killed the plugin market.
So only a month ago, so if you wanted to basically use ChatGPT on let's say a PDF, you need to use one of the plugins, and some of them cost, some of them were free. And in order to do that, you need to upload basically the PDF, to the third-party web page, and then take the information. The ChatGPT takes the information from there. Now, this is not possible anymore. Now you can upload any type of a file in ChatGPT, and you can ask any question that you want, which is super great, super dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So here's my database. Let me know who is my next buyer, and then what is happening on that. But it's very, very interesting. And also we know a couple of companies that they had the motto democratize AI and democratize data science. So what is going to happen with those companies?
Yeah. And just to list, don't want to take too much time, but it was so many new features coming up there. So another part was that these kind of assistants can also call APIs then, of course, and they can do multiple function calls in a single action. And they have proper JSON output that is that's guaranteed to be proper JSON formatted. So it's very easy to integrate with whatever kind of service you have. It also has all these kind of multimodality capabilities. So it can do, of course, image input, which they can take an image and then ask questions about it. Just take a picture of a hamburger and please give me the recipe for this. I saw someone actually taking like every 50 seconds, you take a screenshot of a game, like whatever kind of game you can have, and just ask ChatGPT or GPT-4 Turbo to please describe this image. And then they just had a sequence of these, and you basically had a real-time commentator for what's happening now on this real-time online game. And it works surprisingly well. And that can be the same for sports. You can have a football game, and you can just take pictures from what's happening on the football field and just ask the GPT what's happening.
So you don't need to have someone commenting? Or,
no.
Or the AI could do.
Goodbye to the anchors.
Yes.
So that's, image input, but it can also image output. So then we have DALL-E 3 that it can use to create images. And of course, text to speech. So we can output not only text, but actually speech as well. And the text to speech generation was really good, the best I ever heard. So it really produced text and speech to a level that even 11 Labs and these other services that's out there has not been able to do. So it sounds supernatural, like human-like speech.
Could you tell that it was generated?
I think potentially because it speaks better than humans.
Yeah.
It has perfect
It's
grammar.
more well-spoken.
And well-spoken, yeah. No filler words and whatnot. So potentially by being too perfect, you can tell it's not human.
Maybe he has to add some of those,
Yes.
I don't know.
Some ticks.
Dude.
Exactly.
But the implication now is crazy, right? Because now we are getting very, very close to any type of human computer interface we want for anything.
So it's both like text input, text output. It's audio input with Whisper 3. It's a new version of this Whisper, the awesome model from OpenAI to interpret text, for audio, and text-to-speech output.
So a guy like...
And then image input and output. So it's text, audio, and images, both input and output.
Like a guy like Gulan, who's like a professor at KTH. He needs to go back to his old job and really... to be in human-computer interaction faculty right now at KTH, it must be mind-blowing. There is no limit now to how, why do I need a keyboard, or when do I really need a keyboard, and when is it better to just have a conversation for anything, like a CRM system. As a sales guy with a CRM system sitting in a car, why wouldn't he talk
you can speak
to
to
his
your
CRM
software,
system?
speak to your system.
Hey man, bring up the next couple of leads. Okay, what do you think here I should go for? Should I, I need to, who should I call now? What do you think? I was thinking about calling Anders. No, you have not called this guy in 2 weeks. I think you should better call him now. It's completely doable.
Definitely.
Finally, we have HAL 9000.
I am a Jarvis guy. Are you a Jarvis guy, man?
Yeah, definitely Jarvis.
We're not far away from Jarvis now.
No. I was commenting on this like in May during the Data Innovation Summit, I think.
No, you were making that not as a joke, but as a prediction with a and then 6 months later, someone can build these systems now.
It was not hard to see because you're gonna have. So when I moved to Sweden in 2006, the first weeks were very horrible for me because it was. I arrived in February. It was cold, dark, and gray. So I read some books and I found these books from Philip Pullman. The Golden Compass and etc., which was like fantasy. In these books, and there is movies about this. In this fantasy series, you have basically all the humans have something which is called a demon, which is represented in some kind of a shape of an animal. So it's not like a spiritual demon, rather than it's a physical creature that you get when you're a kid. It appears from somewhere, and that is actually he's your buddy. He helps you with everything, right? Whenever you're doubt, he tells you what to do. You go fight together, you cry together, you do all the things together. That is actually where we are going, I think. That you will have your demon on the side. It's going to be called like, chatbot or whatever it is.
That's what you have in Snapchat. You have your AI friend or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to have somebody to, from the beginning, you will have like Elon Musk is not so far-fetched, is not far-fetched far from the thought like, why do every single of this LLM has to be serious? I want to have a LLM that will be funny. Maybe in the future we will have somebody that is kind, somebody that is a little bit demonic. I don't know, whatever it's going to be. So, but they're going to be different, and you probably would like to have variety of them. So it's interesting what is coming. Apropos then, so let's finish this segment. So Elon Musk is not the only one that is actually starting to get into a game. There was another person as well who wanted to sign what is called the memorandum of not going ahead with AI, and that is of course Amazon. So Amazon, not only that they invested shitloads of money in Anthropic, now they're starting another project which is called Olympus, which is basically a large language model. And the head of this project actually in Amazon is Rohit Prasad, who was formerly head of Alexa, and now he directly reports to the CEO. So as you can see, they feel that they're a little bit lacking behind, so now everybody is in this game. So it's very important. Of course, there was a problem in China because they didn't have any representative that will be competition to ChatGPT. So now they have, in only 3 months, they created a startup which is basically called E108 AI. And already it has an evaluation scientists who actually managed to get like a lot of smart people from all over around the world to build it. And of course, Alibaba is the one big benefiter behind it. So the idea is actually to build like a large language model similar to ChatGPT. And if you look at it, it makes sense because, only China is like much bigger market than everything combined. So they have always had their own version of it. And then finally, in terms of investment, IBM now is announcing another 500 million venture to fund and invest a range of AI companies with a purpose of actually to democratize or to accelerate utilization of generative AI in enterprises. So they are investing in the startup companies. It can be whatever, but it needs to be what is called focusing on generative AI. So I think that right now, at some point of time, I was like, this is a hype, it will pass. I don't think this is a hype anymore. Everybody is on the generative AI. And I think this is the next... there is no going back to the traditional AI.
It is.
Yeah. No, but why do you say going back?
Yes.
But now this is also...
Going forward,
understanding what generative AI is all about, and then understanding what it's not about, and what are in going back. They're going to go in parallel.
Of course they are, but there is nothing about the rest of the things.
Not in news, but in practice, I think it is not replacing; it is adding to.
Of course,
but Anders, for the next news section, I actually ask you to bring up a news that is not generative AI oriented.
That will be hard. I'll have to ask Brock about that.
Oh yeah, you can do AI act.
No. Of the technology breakthroughs, I think you should balance.
But media is just hyping.
Isn't it hard to find it even? Yes, that's the problem, right?
So all right, let's conclude this section and let's move on. And it's over. All right, let's go.
Okay, awesome.
But I think you're right. I mean, it's all about generative AI in the news, and also in regulatory talk. A lot of the discussions are around generative AI and what are the risks in that area. And we're talking more about the existential risks that don't even exist yet. No. And we skip a lot.
We should go back to Earth a little bit.
Yeah, we skip talking about, the risks that are actually here for real, like with bias and discrimination and inaccuracy at scale and so on, and what we need to do about that.
But this is what I like with the executive order. I think the executive order, the way it was outlined, was actually talking about here and now. And actually, we have another word, the frontier AI. We talked about that last time.
But I'm with Josefin. She said something very smart there. It was just an agreement. Where's the follow-up? GDPR was a great agreement. It was a good legislation. Tell me the last time when it was updated.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
The world is not the same.
No, it isn't. And it's not the same even as last week. Right. I mean... Things are happening so quickly.
It's like reading the Bible, right? Jesus didn't have a phone. Definitely Moses didn't have a phone.
So, I didn't have one when I was a kid either.
So,
I think
it's a different world.
It is good with getting an increasingly global regulation at least.
Let's go here now. This is what I was going for.
Yes, exactly. So for one, the Bletchley Park declaration was a good thing because it's not just EU creating an EU AI Act. No. It actually is, a number of countries throughout the world and companies doing it together. And that's a really good thing. But should we go to the AI Act? I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts is about EU Act and
But I don't want to leave. I want to do a couple of reflections on this topic now.
Okay.
Because it's not as simple to say this is a good thing. I think it's a huge thing, and it's very problematic when you have
which thing, regulations in general.
Regulations in general, especially now around a topic like AI, or like a topic we had 50 years ago around nuclear. It is virtually impossible with a topic like AI to have a local regulation on it, because how can some be ethical and some go bananas? So that to me has always been the biggest concern with the EU Act, that it's not worth anything if you're not going to put this in a context of the real players. And what is the real players? I think what happened now with the AI Safety Summit is someone actually took the real look at this, the countries and the biggest companies. So this whole territorial, we do this in EU. Of course, it's great that we're getting started, but it doesn't mean anything until we get here. And then, so that was one reflection. Then I thought it was, I just want to point out, there was a great article. Why do we think the executive order was sort of, in the US it wasn't a coincidence that did that on Monday before the actual,
who should lead the race?
So it was really putting a stamp on to say, great that we're doing this in UK, and UK had an ambition, the Prime Minister had an ambition that UK can lead this. So here was very much a clear view that, we are there to put the mark on this. So I think in many ways, there was a success in terms of the summit that we moved forward, but the success was not what the Prime Minister had envisioned, that he would be the main star of the show. That didn't happen in this way.
No.
Interesting politics.
So do you think we need to have a global regulation for trustworthy AI, or can and should companies still take the lead in being trustworthy before other companies do so?
I think the fact, that we are discussing regulations, although I can agree on that it is difficult that we have a lot of different ones and there is a need for alignment. And I think, Biden's executive order has been looking at the different proposals around the world and building upon those, which is a great thing. But I think the fact that we are introducing regulations sort of wakes companies and organizations up and countries up to, have a wish to be trustworthy and work with these things. It has created some awareness.
Yes, I think so, because I think, what you said in the beginning was really interesting, that, companies that do work with trustworthy AI will have a lead. And they will benefit from that. And I think regulation is not necessarily the same thing. Regulation, if a country puts that forward without having other countries on board, will be a big problem for that country. But trustworthy AI, if a company actually do that properly, it will be a benefit for. And they can do
There's
that.
There's so many different reasons for that. I mean,
but you agree with that like companies should still, be the leader of trustworthy AI, and that's a bit different from regulation, because then
you're not just compliant. You also no one wants to do business with someone that's just doing, shoveling rainforests or whatever, doing bad things. You want to be connected to someone that is doing the right thing.
So for trustworthy AI, companies should just do it because they will benefit from it in the end.
Yeah.
But if we want to have a regulation without hurting companies, it needs to be more global potentially. Do you agree with that?
No, I think any type of regulation is, promoting creating some kind of framework for fostering trust, and, sort of reducing risks through more awareness, and that organizations are starting to pay attention to these things, which I think is a good thing.
But should you regulate and force companies to have trustworthy AI, you think?
I think that's sort of what we're doing. In a way, we are, with the EU AI Act, we're forcing, business models to be based on transparency and fairness, which I think is a good thing. I'm not a legal person, so I can't say whether it's good or not, but I think it's welcomed that we are creating some kind of framework for promoting trust. Yep. I think right now, despite regulations, a lot of people are scared of what AI can do, the speed of its development and what's happening in generative AI is sort of out of control. If you listen to media, it's sort of a drama around everything with AI, which is pretty unfortunate. I think we're, giving way too much attention to discussions about existential risks and, airtime to, for instance, like Max Tegmark's summer show
what
talk.
Do you think about that? Was too alarmist, do you think? Or?
Yeah, I think, he's playing Highway to Hell and, discussing the end of the world as a result of AI. And I think that is scaring people. Yeah. I think it's unnecessary.
It's hurtful too.
It's hurtful because it doesn't lead anywhere and it doesn't create trust. And trust is what we need. And, AI is being used so much more than we can ever imagine. I don't think that people realize how often they are using AI these days.
Algorithms in different things.
Exactly. And it's also becoming a super important part of all kinds of decision making in society. So if we can't trust that, that's a big failure and a big risk. So I think,
But could we make an attempt among the three of us to do some sort of straw manning, steel manning, pros and cons with the EU regulation? What's good with it and what is problematic with it? Mm-hmm. Can we try to objectively look at it from both sides for a little bit?
Mm-hmm. You start.
Can I start? Okay, so I think in general that we need regulation in these topics is a given. Okay, and I think that is a given. I think what is problematic with the regulation like that, the number one problem there are two major problems when you're trying to regulate tech. Or like this. First of all, I think it's how can you regulate it within one boundary of a region when internet and technology and data is truly global. So how can you have laws and regulate this within a regional boundary that is sort of superficial based on countries when the internet and data doesn't follow that logic? It follows the logic of companies. It follows a different logic. I find that problematic, and to take it. And what it becomes problematic is it becomes, instead of us trying to basically in Europe lead the world, and we are looking at ourselves as the world giving guidance to the rest of the world. Essentially, if the rest of the world is looking to us, we are building a wall towards everyone else, and it's essentially we are fencing ourselves into our own bubble, and I think it could be easily seen when the White House goes in and comments on the EU Act line by line. Every single sentence has been commented by the White House. What is good, what is problematic, and where they basically from a US perspective highlights that this regulation is anti-small business. This regulation is anti-entrepreneurship, and this we cannot support. So basically, do whatever you want within your own prison of Europe. Okay.
But that's not true. I mean.
So I don't say what is true. I'm talking about different perceptions.
Not what you're saying, but what he is saying, because the EU AI Act will be valid. It will, people that are trying to position products on our market would have to apply as well. So the US, will have large effect on them as well.
Yeah, but in the end, I think it really means if I'm a US company, I decide it's not worth it to do business in US.
Yeah,
I think we are misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I think what is the problem is that we are not understanding the consequences. What is the knock-on effect value chain of this? So it literally, there's a very concrete example. If you're a small startup and you're trying to do a cool startup around something in AI, in Silicon Valley or anywhere else, you would put Europe last on your market and say, I'm not going to touch Europe until I'm a double unicorn.
But
that's what's going to happen.
What would it be that they were opposing against? Because, I mean, the
cost of going into Europe.
What do you think, Josefin? What's your thoughts about AI Act?
What I like about it is, you know, the risk-based approach.
That's nice. I like it as well.
I like it because, you know, we are clearly banning certain AI applications that are harmful and, you know, dangerous, and that's a good thing. It's like,
and you said applications. I like that you said applications. So good.
Yeah, and I like that.
Instead of techniques. Yeah. So that's why.
Applications definitely, and I mean there's a big portion of AI. I mean, if you look at that triangle that they have been, you know, putting up as illustrating the AI Act, it's a big portion that's not regulated at all. That is, you know, and a lot of AI that we use today is basically, you know, making other things easier and you know, making embedded in software to make it easier to navigate and things like that, and that's not affected. And there are certain parts that are only requirements for transparency, which is also good. But I think, you know, the part that they're focusing on, the high risk, is what could actually affect the individual. That could mean, you know, have an impact on health and security, economy, human rights in general. And I think that's a good thing because, I mean, what it all comes down to is to get people to trust AI that they're using today, to get, you know, feel confident, to feel safe when they're using it, and that it's not going to harm the end user. And we're requiring, you know, transparency. We're requiring monitoring and, you know, management over time. And that will be a problem if you're not having things in place, right? If you're trying to checklist everything afterwards or trying to fix things afterwards, it's going to be difficult. But if you make sure that it becomes sort of, you know, fluency, like we talked about before, it's going to be a natural part of innovating responsibly instead, which is a good thing. If we can get everyone to innovate responsibly, then that's a really good thing for humanity and for companies, and I believe for everyone. And I don't think I'm allowed to, you know, say that I'm pro or against the regulations, but in general with regulations, I think it creates trust.
The most important thing that should create, the benefit that you want to get out of it, is that you want to get out a stable playing field to invest. So one of the problems, if I take an example with the energy market, there's no innovation and investment in energy. What is the problem with that? It's because the political environment makes it really hard. Should we go for nuclear or not? Or should we go for, you know, so regulation that creates stability of the playing field is good. So I think there are a lot of benefits of getting this right. But I'm what I was trying to say is, I was trying to give an example of what becomes problematic when we are looking at this from, you know, we're navelskådare, we are looking in towards Europe instead of understanding the knock-on effects on how the rest of the world is looking at us and what are the consequence chains that we are unraveling here. And I don't think we can really understand that.
Oh, no, and it's not finalized. Yeah,
it is not.
Right?
Isn't that the problem by itself?
That's the thing.
I mean, you said a number of positive things about AI Act, which I think is good. And I think we all agree that
I agree with them.
The intention is really good with AI Act. Same as for GDPR. The intentions were great there as well. And I think the risk-based approach, as you said, is a really good way, and the human-centric kind of thing, and adding transparency, basically building up trust for AI, which is your specialty, of course. And this is is a regulation that is potentially supporting that. But if you were to try to find or straw man the AI Act, do you see any potential downsides or problematic parts of the AI Act? I
can see that it will be difficult to regulate AI because of the pace of its development right now. I mean, what about next month? And that's a challenge, and I don't know how to solve that. And
that's a good one.
Yeah.
So I will try to be funny.
Yeah.
You're grokking it now, then?
Yes, exactly. I'm grokking it now.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a new word. We're grokking it.
We're grokking it right now. So if you look, what Europe is very good is collecting money. So what GDPR did in this prism that you said, it just basically made like a administrative hole where every single company in the world who is not doing properly needed to pay fines. So what is the result of GDPR? We have more cookies on the web pages. We have a lot of emails in our inboxes, and Europe got $4.4 billion in fines. 4.4 billion. This is how much is the equivalent of all the fines in Europe right now. That is the statistics on the floor. So when we are regulating this, I think we are making as well, because the big companies will still pay the fine, right? No problem. You want to sue me for $1 billion? No problem.
And then GDPR is only 4% of global annual revenue, and AI Act is 6, right? 6%.
Yeah. The second thing is, when I went to Australia, which was very interesting for me, there was no talk about regulation. It was talk about standardization. So my question is, what comes first, regulation or standardization? Why we don't first standardize the technology, or basically standardize the way how we use it, and then we regulate on the applications of it. So, for example, you regulate how a car what car should have, right? If it's a diesel, it needs to have this proper, CO2 emission, AdBlue, I think it was called, and etc. Right? You know that you need to have safety belts. You know that you need to have airbags and blinkers and all of this other stuff. Everything is standardized in a car. It needs to be there. And then you basically just regulate the way how you use it.
No, but the regulation came that you had to have seatbelts. The regulation came that you had to have seatbelts in the car. The regulation came as a standard how you build cars.
Yes.
And then it came a regulation that you should use the seatbelt.
Exactly.
So there are two regulations.
Difficult.
Yes.
Legislation, regulation, standardization.
Yeah, but you were also on that, because otherwise if you regulate the technology, then you need to update every 6 months. I mean, right now we are doing news every week and we cannot catch up with the news that is happening. How
I guess
do you
the
regulate
executive
that?
order, he's mentioning, that he wants this new committee, I guess it's AI safety committee, to come up with standards to work after, which is a good thing.
And I really like the executive order here. And I think we talked about this when we talked about what was good with GDPR, what was lacking or missing with GDPR. So with GDPR, we put up all this regulation and policy, but there was no institute to guide or a consultative approach to how to implement it. I mean, if I compared with other departments in Sweden, like the Finansinspektionen, they have taken a very consultative approach on what they're doing. All this to me was very slim, if I say it kindly, in GDPR. And so how can you put all this regulation out and where no one knows really how to act on them, or there are no guidelines, there are no toolbox. So how can you make a regulation without a toolbox? And this is a little bit what I think when you say standardizations. What if we invest heavily in the institute with the toolboxes,
exactly,
with the real toolboxes of how to make trustworthy AI, yes. And you put the first millions, like you're talking about now, instead of putting 10 years on people, 10 billion in revision process, I put 10 billion in building an institute that just spits out what are good practices for trustworthy AI, and then you see how that works, and then you regulate on that.
So how it was done in Australia, which was very interesting, this was not like something that came from the government or etc. It was the industry, the major companies came together and created a body that will work around one single standard, which is the ISO standard, that then everybody else can replicate and duplicate in their organizations. Yes, and we have done this for hundreds of years. We standardize the hammer, we standardize how a pen looks like, how a nail looks like, how a screw looks like. Every single one of them has a number, and that is actually to a pattern, to a ISO standard. And they're thinking like that. And it's an old way of thinking, but it's so beautiful, because then everybody can, first, you have standardization. The second thing, you have duplication. Everybody can take the standard and just implement it directly, because you know what it is. With the regulation and GDPR, it was just chaos. I mean, who made the money during the GDPR?
The lawyers.
The lawyers did,
right?
Yeah. Because they did their own interpretation. Also, like, of course, your webpage is not good. You should pay 25,000 crowns or whatever it is going to be. And we all paid because we needed to do it.
As I understood it.
And in the same time, you can still go online in Sweden, that is a democratic country, an open society. You can find who I am, where do I live, who am I married to, how old I am, my telephone number, my social security number. You can pay for that. Yes, exactly.
So this is the big job. GDPR has sensitive data, and you can go into any web page that sells this. And how can that be legal? How can that be legal?
I don't know, and I'm definitely not a legal pro. But what I understood is, when the Act comes into force, which is fairly soon, as at the latest they say March 2024. We don't know, but I also heard it's. I mean,
it hasn't gone through all the hoops yet.
It could be. It's still logical that it could happen in December, right? Yeah. And they want to finalize it before the presidency of Spain or whatever in March, right? So when it happens, it will have 2 years of implementation period.
Right. The same as GDPR. It had 2 years implementation.
And what's the investment in the institute? What is the AI Regulation Institute? How big is the billions of investments that goes to just put out a law and not at the same time put 10 billion in an institute to support Europe? I think is reckless. Mm-hmm. If you want to put that law in place, fine, do it in December, but put your money behind your mouth to support us.
Yeah.
I'm really upset when someone is passing a law,
and we don't know,
and we don't have an institute
if
to support
there is any kind of roadmap.
There's no roadmap for how to implement or execute it.
But keep in mind, so there is quite a lot of. So right now, the latest that I was reading on Monday is that because 2 weeks ago you had I think it was the Spanish delegation. They wanted to change the way the perception of foundation models, and it was actually good because it was loosening up a little bit on the LLMs, because chatbot they were in the second what is called risk zone, right? Mm-hmm. So what I read is there's
chatbots. I mean, from the beginning, were I guess in limited risk.
Yeah, limited risk. So second
transparency.
Yeah. So now they are still there, but this is coming, and people do not understand. This is going to come. Doesn't matter if there is a roadmap or not. This is coming. I think the January to March. So we were betting that by Data Innovation Summit in April next year, the major talk in town will be like, shit. What do we do now?
Exactly. Yes. That's why you need to prepare.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's an example. If you speak about chatbots, and having a regulation that speaks about a technique like chatbots, I would say is problematic, because a chatbot can be used for so many different applications. If you use it to groom, small children, it should be banned forever.
And it's high risk. Yeah, it's unacceptable risk.
It's unacceptable. Yeah. If it's used to have customer service, and it's sometimes, or music recommendations,
or you are allergic to comedy and you need to use Groot.
I mean, I think this is the biggest problem, that some parts of this AI Act is based on techniques instead of applications, and that is not a good thing. I hope that it actually.
We haven't passed the text yet, so it might.
I know,
and they might even look at the.
But there are so many things here that sort of gets me really, really upset in the end, because you cannot solve a global problem in a local context, period. You can work on it and you can start with it. I think it's reckless to put out regulation without institute and investment to support implementation of regulation. That is screwed up. And we learned.
He's against.
No, I'm not against the EU regulation. I'm against the package, how it's done. Yeah. I'm not against the EU regulation. I'm against how you are.
I'll refrain from commenting.
Please do.
Before we know how it actually turns out.
Yes.
But in general,
in general, it's a really good thing.
It will promote trust, and I think it will, make people try to innovate responsibly and in a trustworthy way. I think the wish to do so.
So let me be super clear. I'm not against the EU Act and regulation, but I'm very, very concerned with the execution of how we are doing it. And what scares me is how we can deal with regulating tech versus application. I'm scared about how to make this work in a global context, and I'm scared of putting out regulation without heavy investment in supporting and guidance and allowing us to do the work we're supposed to do. To put something out like they did with GDPR and we're all blind for 3 years, that was not good. 5 years. That was not good.
And I guess right now we don't even know who the who will monitor the compliance either.
No, so basically when you put out the regulation, I think there's a couple of, there's like 10 slices of the pie, and you kind of need to understand the bigger portion of the pie when we make this decision.
But there
hopefully they have a plan.
Hopefully. I haven't seen it.
To close on a positive note on this thing. Joke on aside now, if you look at the benefits of GDPR, was that people started thinking rationally about how they innovate through data. So that was the positive thing about it, right? So I think that is
consciousness about the topic.
Yes. So basically, before that, it was just a chaos. Like you do whatever you want to with the data. Suddenly, oh wait, I need to think that there is an ethics, and I need to be ethical about data, and I need to think about the customer and all of these journeys and etc. And people started to be a little bit more educated about what is their rights when it comes to their personal data and how they should be used for very commercialization. Positive. So very positive thing. So it was not for waste, right? And sometimes that is all we need is a little bit of a kick. I believe the same thing will happen with the AI Act. Maybe it will not be exactly like framed, but it will make organizations start thinking like, okay, do I truly understand how this model works that I'm putting it out on the market? If a customer is using it, what is the repercussion behind it? What is the legal risk behind it? And all of this is all trustworthy, is it ethical, right?
And all this is good. This is super great.
And that is one good thing I think about the executive order that I liked, as I understood it at least, that they require high risk developers of high risk AI to test and then share the test results with the government, and that's a good thing. But I hope that in EU that it will be easier to test in a protected environment, because it has been talks about that, open up test beds and sandboxes and things like that. And that would be great.
I need to ask, do you prefer the way it's done in the executive order by US compared to the EU regulation? Do you have a preference on the approaches?
It's very broad. A little funny thing I think about the executive order that surprised me a little bit, but that was quite interesting, was that he also says, now I say he, Biden, but I guess it's not him saying that, but
it's Biden.
He's encouraging government agencies to experiment and play around with generative AI applications. And he was also discouraging from banning, government agencies specifically working on generative AI applications. And I think that's quite interesting because, a lot of employees larger companies have forbidden employees to experiment with generative AI because of data privacy and
so I prefer the way the executive order has been set up, the way he's highlighting it with a clear focus and investment on its own departments, the way he's encouraging, the way he's framing an institute.
It's very innovative,
so
I think.
As a package around the regulation, I think it goes magnitudes more sharp than the EU regulation.
I think it wants to, the Act has gotten some criticism for being, inhibiting innovation. And he's really, I think, pushing for promoting innovation and making that clear that he's promoting innovation. But
this is literally what I mean. There are several topics in this pie. In the executive order, they're addressing his own departments. He's addressing the regulation itself, and he's addressing an institute to help us go there. So he has a more comprehensive end-to-end understanding of what he's doing. If I compare, and with a roadmap more clearly mapped out, so he has put an effort not only into a legal document, but into the other pieces of the puzzle. I think the main problem with the EU Act is that it's one piece in the large puzzle. And it's very, very scary when you try to put that one piece in the puzzle and all the other things are unknowns. That's what my fear is.
Let's hope at least the AI Act will promote more trustworthy AI, right?
I have that hope.
Yes, we do.
At least, if you innovate responsibly and do it in a trustworthy way, then you have come far. So
it can sound scary when you read some of the literate kind of text that you have, but I think in the end it will be a positive thing. Yeah. At least that's my hope.
The purpose is to promote trust and safety, and that is, I guess, that is a good thing. So
the time is also flying away, and I'd like to ask a more philosophical question to you. So if and or when an AGI becomes available. An AGI in the sense that it's a model that will be able to perform basically any task better than any human that you think of. Today, it's very easy to think about, ChatGPT or whatnot. You can think of many tasks that it cannot do, but that humans can do better. So it's by no means close to AGI. But it potentially will come a day where we will have an AGI that will be better for any task, better than any human. If that and when that happens, what do you think the world will turn out to be? It could be like either this kind of dystopian nightmare of a Terminator style.
The Boström story.
Yes, that they're going to kill humanity and it's really afraid about humans. Or it could be like the other extreme, the utopian world where humans don't have any needs for working or creating money. They basically are free to pursue their own passions and creativity at their pleasure and have no needs for monetary gains or whatnot. What do you think? Two extremes. Yes, two extremes.
Yeah.
What do you think? For one, do you think an AGI will happen? And what do you think it will turn out to be?
I'm not sure AGI will happen. We're definitely not there yet. And I don't know if it will get there. Even further away from superintelligence, which would be, superior to even an AGI. And that's what also, I guess, Tegmark speaks about.
Yeah.
I believe more in the utopian answer there. I'm not worried about AI ending the humanity in any way. And I think, if AI would be that intelligent at some point, I would wish, and also, expected to have picked up some decency and some ethics along the way.
And trustworthiness.
And trustworthiness along the way. Otherwise, it wouldn't be that smart,
right?
I think.
But this is your classical argument. Have we become more malevolent? I can never say that word. Benevolent or
benevolent.
Benevolent. What is that?
More friendly. I mean, if we go back like thousands of years, it was basically the laws of the jungle, and people were fighting each other and were fighting to get food and survive for the day. As we continue to evolve as humans throughout the centuries and thousands of years, we became increasingly civilized, and the industrialization and as technology evolved, created better opportunities for us and basically reduced the amount of harm and evilness, I would even say. And just going back 100 years, it's an extreme difference in the level of civility that we have in our society today compared to them.
So we have of course our wars and problems in all times. But if you look at the medieval times, was it more civilized or less civilized? Was it more crazy? Was it more easy to be killed or less? And I think the argument is that if you just look at how we have evolved as humanity, as we become more smart or more, the consciousness,
exactly.
the global intelligence,
get more decent, and
the more intelligence we have, the more global our knowledge is about how different cultures work. Does it make us worse or better? So why, if a super intelligence is on this trajectory, why wouldn't it continue on this trajectory? Why would it what's the
should
logic?
also have some empathic intelligence. I mean,
absolutely. And why would it feel that humans are threatening it if it has so much more intelligence?
I don't understand that either.
Power?
And I think it's odd to also expect the more intelligent you are, the more evil you would be, which is kind of weird. And I think, if from the beginning an AI, it's driven by a goal to do a certain task and do it better and better, why would it's all of a sudden forget what it was doing and do something else and forget that it needed to align with humans? I think it will be super good at aligning with us.
But I can strawman that argument. So the argument could be that we program the AI, the super intelligent AI, to really take care of Mother Earth, so it doesn't kill off Mother Earth. And then the super intelligent AI understands the biggest virus that is killing off the Earth is these ants, the humans.
Yeah,
right?
but it can simply help humans to have technology.
But maybe we could just add that little, prerequisite.
Just
never
remove the
kill
dependency
humans
to oil and make sure that you have fusion energy, which is not that far away potentially, and then we have no problem with energy at all.
No.
Then make sure that we can have energy from fusion or from sun energy or whatnot, and then we have no need for anything, and we live in a world of abundance.
If it's human-centric, which is one of the principles of trustworthy AI, if we make sure that it is
human-centric,
human centricity, then it will stay aligned with our purposes, even though it gets super intelligent, right? And then it will not. If it's human-centric, will not start to kill us.
And this is,
I hope it's not human-centric, actually.
No.
I hope it's beyond human-centric.
No, but
because the worst thing that I fear in life is basically a human. No, but I'm speaking with my daughter, and my daughter said, like, Daddy, do you believe in ghosts? It's like, don't be afraid of ghosts, be afraid of people.
Yeah.
Because on the end,
but it's true to some extent. But in the context of ending humankind, right? Then
it's benevolent to humans at least.
My point was that I don't believe that AI will be the end of us. It will be a stupid person behind the AI that will.
Because that is,
exactly.
I think, the true problem. I mean, I think humans empowered by AI can be really dangerous. And that is really what we need to regulate about. And I think what you said also a number of times, we have risks here today
that are reality,
and of fairness or from using AI for bad applications. That is really what we should focus on and regulate on.
And I think this is the biggest problem with this existentialist threat type conversation, that they actually muddle the water on the urgent conversations we need to have on these topics here and now.
Exactly.
That is real risks here and now.
And that we actually also can do something about with a solid, trustworthy governance framework.
So you're making the risk more abstract, which is actually making it harder to navigate in the short term, and to So I think that is a true topic.
And I think if media could stop focusing on scaring people and instead creating awareness, because we have a big job in front of us. I think to educate and people and make them aware of the risks and the potential.
Have you noticed something? Sorry, I have been very bunching in this time. Sorry, Anders, I can see the.
No, I'm happy about that.
Have you seen the narrative in the United States versus what is in Sweden and etc.? So if the government is actually subsidizing, even in Norway, when the government is subsidizing this type of initiatives and talking about AI that is going to do good, then the media doesn't have anything else. They will talk about the positive thing because they will understand. However, in the absence of knowledge, drives the fear, and media is driving on the fear.
Yeah.
So I think we need more people, especially in our community, to be out there and speak about the positivity and what we can do with this technology.
And not speak about you're not allowed to do this and that.
Exactly.
To not refrain from it.
Yes,
right?
and see how many people since so now we have. All of us, we have been working in this community now for I have been personally for 10 years. You guys have been for 20 years, right? I have been working in event business for 20 years, but in data and AI, I have been for 10 years. We have been talking about the good things about this for 10 years. And we have been talking about AI for many years now, and suddenly ChatGPT comes, and there comes a lot of people in the morning shows and etc. that I have never seen in my entire life talking about it like they know what they're talking about. They're talking about how this is going to take jobs, how this is going to end the world and etc. Just because they want to sell fear and they want to show their egos and they want to prostrate themselves as experts in this area.
Want to write a book.
Yes, exactly. But it's like, I don't think it's healthy. We need to move beyond that. And we need a little bit more to speak out about how positive this is.
Exactly. 100% agree.
Yeah.
It's a good conclusion, I think.
That's a positive conclusion.
Let's hope for that. And the more objective,
positive evangelism to balance the fear evangelism.
Definitely. AI is amazing.
As well.
A lot of potential.
Perhaps not grokking. Anyway, Josefin Rosén, it's been a true pleasure to have you here. I hope you can stay on for some additional after work discussions
I'd love
as well.
to. This looks so delicious. I didn't want to try it while we were talking.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having me. It has been a true pleasure for me too.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Bye.